Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Rick Baker, and I have the honor of serving as the president and CEO of your Grand Rapids Chamber. The Grand Rapids Chamber is a fierce advocate for business. We work to address issues impacting business from roads and taxes to childcare and housing. Creating great policy starts with you. This year, over 700 businesses responded to our annual survey and shared their top concerns about issues impacting the West Michigan business community. Your input guides our work. That's why the Chamber has started 2021 with action to waive fees on unpaid property taxes due to the impacts of COVID-19, help reopen restaurants, wedding venues and offices, and increase funding for childcare and address the housing shortage. To become engaged or learn more about the Chamber's advocacy efforts, please visit grandrapids.org. We are pleased to hear from Governor Whitmer and her administration's budget proposal, as well as the state's response to the joint health and economic crisis brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic. Following her remarks, the governor will be joined by Dave Massaron, Budget Director for the state of Michigan, for a facilitated question and answer session. Thank you to everyone who submitted questions during the registration. These questions have been reviewed and will be asked as many as the time allows. The chat will be closed during this event, but we'd like to encourage you to continue this conversation about today's program on Twitter by tagging the Chamber and using hashtag #CreateGreatPolicy. One last thing before we get started, and I'd like to thank the investors in our government affairs work. They include our advocacy underwriters, Amway, and our advocacy supporters, AT&T Michigan, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan, and Priority Health. Thanks to our investors for making our work possible. Without further delay, please welcome to your screens, proud alumnus of Forest Hills Central High School and the 49th governor of the great state of Michigan, Governor Gretchen Whitmer. Welcome, Governor.
Thanks, Rick. Good to be with you. Thank you all for giving me some time today to talk a little bit about where we are and where we want to be headed. We introduced the third state budget, which is hard to believe it's already the third year of it. And so I'm joined today by Dave Massaron, who is the director of the state budget office, so that he can help delve a little deeper when we have a little Q&A section at the end. So to all the members of the Grand Rapids Chamber, thank you for giving me some of your time today. I'm glad to be with you. 2 weeks ago, I was proud to put forward my third budget as governor. It's a budget that prioritizes getting people back to work, sending kids back to school, and doing it safely so we can build back better. The budget is one piece of the larger effort of my administration that we're undertaking to keep Michigan moving forward, despite all of the colliding crises that we have faced. The other piece is the Michigan COVID Recovery Plan, which I proposed about a month ago, to spend the federal funds that have been allocated to us in a bipartisan bill signed months ago by President Trump. My fiscal year 2022 budget builds on the My COVID Recovery Plan that I've already laid out and keeps us on the road to recovery. So the recovery plan invests $5 billion in Michigan. These are the dollars that came from the federal government back in December. Among other things, it supports small businesses, it expands vaccinations and testing, both of which are crucial components to jumpstarting our economy and getting back to normal sooner. Now, all budgets are about values. They're not just numbers on a balance sheet. And this budget, I think, makes my values clear. We're going to equitably grow our economy by investing in our children and public education, expanding economic opportunity, safeguarding public health, backing essential infrastructure projects and clean energy initiatives, and protecting the environment. I think that these are priorities we can all get behind, Republicans and Democrats alike. And I look forward to passing this budget and delivering for the people of our state. First, let's talk about our families. The COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated so many underlying issues and ongoing challenges faced by families in Michigan and across the country. As of this weekend, it's taken 500,000 lives from us. In order to stay on track of the work that we had started in 2019, we really need to make historic investments in Michiganders of all ages and empower them to continue learning in the classroom and pursue post-secondary opportunities. So to do so, my budget calls for the largest investment in K-12 schools in our state's history. This includes money to stabilize schools and school districts and mitigate the impact of the pandemic on students' learning and development. Our children have adapted to changing circumstances in remarkable ways. We need to do our part to make sure that they've got the support they need. Working parents have also made countless sacrifices, large and small, to keep their families going. To give working parents a much needed boost, my budget invests $370 million to significantly lower childcare costs, in some cases down to zero. This game-changing investment in early learning will provide access to quality, affordable childcare for 150,000 additional Michigan families. It immediately and directly helps parents continue working while giving them peace of mind to know that their kids can continue to grow and learn. I'm particularly proud of this piece because of the impact it'll have on women and working mothers who have really borne the brunt of the economic pain during this pandemic. Since the beginning of the pandemic, women have been hit hardest by coronavirus layoffs. And as we approach the year mark, hundreds of thousands, 275,000 in January alone, have been forced to leave the workforce due to the pandemic. It's been called the She Session, and that's for good reason. A total of 2.4 million women, disproportionately women of color, have left the workforce since last February. By making sizable investment in childcare, we can help alleviate the burden faced by working families, especially women and specifically women of color, who've had to make countless sacrifices to put food on the table and care for their kids. And I want to give a special shout out to the leadership role that you, the Grand Rapids Chamber, has played in helping our state think differently about how to make childcare more affordable. Last year, with your leadership, we included $1 million in the budget to pilot the Child Care Tri-Share, the program, the first of a kind in the nation, splitting the cost of childcare between family, employer, and the state. Each partner paying a third, and all of us getting benefits. So we just finished accepting the first round of applications for the pilot, and I've proposed expanding the program with an additional $2.2 million investment in fiscal year 22. Finding quality, affordable childcare is hard, and this is one way we can help make it easier for families and for employers in the state. Now let's talk about some of the shovel-ready projects that this budget backs. I know you've heard me say fix the damn roads many times by now, and I'm not going to stop until we have fully met the infrastructure challenges our state faces. Just today, I testified to a U.S. Senate congressional hearing on infrastructure. I know you and I share an enthusiasm for infrastructure, and I'm glad to have you as partners in this effort. The budget helps us achieve our shared vision, building on the progress we've made throughout this pandemic to continue strengthening Michigan's infrastructure. We're putting $300 million toward fixing the bridges, 120 of them in counties spanning the state. This list includes the Ferrysburg Bridge, which is open with load restrictions for the first time in a year. These investments in the budget will complement our ongoing road bonding projects, and together they'll vastly improve infrastructure throughout our state. We're also hoping that we will have great federal support as we're moving forward. So we're also investing in critical water infrastructure, plugging shortfalls and supporting thousands of good paying jobs for Michiganders along the way. And a significant piece of my budget is dedicated to helping Michigan's businesses and workers pursue their potential. Businesses, especially small businesses, have been hit hard by the pandemic and the resulting economic downturn. You feel it, you see it, we all do. The pandemic has disrupted every aspect of our lives, and every one of us, Republican and Democrat alike, small business owners and students, parents and healthcare professionals. We all need to be united in our fight against it. We all know a restaurant or a nail salon or a cornerstone of a community that is facing tough times because of the pandemic we're living through. But knowing what I know about Michiganders is we are resilient. We need to support our small businesses. And to do that, I've already proposed $225 million in the My COVID Recovery Plan to target small businesses left out of other relief programs, ensuring they've got resources they need to recover and grow. In addition to passing that plan, I urge the legislature to pass Good Jobs for Michigan legislation, which will help us retain and grow our businesses and create even more jobs. We're also launching a brand new $25 million Mobile Futures Initiative that supports a statewide effort to ensure that Michigan continues to drive the future of mobility and electrification. We put the world on wheels and the industry continues to move forward. So we've got to adapt and leverage our competitive advantages and decades of experience to work on the frontier of innovation in the autonomous, electric, shared, and connected vehicle spaces. And the budget also recommends $15 million for the continuation of Pure Michigan. Now let's talk about our dynamic workforce. I know a lot of us have had many conversations about upskilling our population and creating opportunity. So this budget makes a significant investment in our skilled and talented workforce, ensuring that they can continue to succeed. Talent, as we know, is often one of, if not the most important factor in a company's decision for where they're going to do business. And we want to ensure Michigan's workforce is ready to compete for the jobs of today and of the future. Our budget continues to be the engine of our economy, and our people continue to be the engine of our economy, and efforts toward helping people enhance their skills will power us to new highs as we move into 2021. In the past, I've outlined my administration's broader 60 by 30 goal, working towards 60% of Michigan adults holding a post-secondary degree by 2030. This budget takes tangible steps to make that target, which is now less than a decade away. We've got to make it a reality. So by putting $200 million into programs that help Michiganders access professional certificates, skills training, and higher education, we can boost their career opportunities even amidst the economic downturn. That includes $120 million for the Reconnect program. It's a bipartisan program that provides Michiganders 25 and up a tuition-free path to attend an in-demand industry certificate program or get an associate degree. $60 million for Futures for Frontliners, which we created modeled after the GI Bill post-World War II to offer college tuition to essential workers who've been working tirelessly through the pandemic. And $15 million for Going Pro, which expands employer-based training grants for new and current employees in high-demand skilled trades. That brings the total for the program up to $44 million. So I know we've shared goals in this area, especially on the Reconnect and Futures for Frontliners programs. And I encourage you to reach out to the legislature to make sure we fully back these essential programs. There is demand. We had 82,000 applications for Futures for Frontliners at the close of last year. And in the first 24 hours, I think we had something like 12,000 applications for the Reconnect. I think we're up to 40,000 or more at this juncture. It's only been a couple of weeks. So there is a desire to upskill. And I know that the employers need that as well. So it's good news. I want to briefly elaborate on the specific impact that this budget is going to have on Grand Rapids. We're putting over $16 million towards 6 closed or critical condition bridges in the Grand Rapids area. We're increasing funding to Kent County schools by a combined $27.5 million. And we're providing over $30 million to counties across Western Michigan to help them manage their way through revenue losses. The 22 budget is laser focused on putting Michigan back to work and sending kids back to school safely and as soon as possible. I'm going to continue reaching across the aisle and engaging with the legislature in good faith to ensure that we don't waste a dime of the over $5 billion in federal aid that we have, so that we can make further investments, so we can help get our state and the people of our state back on our feet. I ran on fixing the damn roads, improving public education and skills training, protecting and expanding healthcare, and cleaning up our water and environment. In the face of historic colliding crises, we must and we will do even more. This budget takes concrete steps toward the issues that I ran on and the stakes of the moment we face today. It invests in our people, it funds key projects, unlocks potential. And it's a balanced budget that proposes a $175 million deposit into our state's rainy day fund. It's a spark we need to jumpstart our economy so we can get rolling on this road to recovery. To meet this moment, though, we have to work together. And I know all of you, as members of the business community, understand the vital role that civility plays in our political discourse. And I'm with you in that. I know that civility is crucial to a healthy, functioning state. I know, too, that we have work to do. Civility is an action. It's not an abstract concept. We have to live our values and not just say them out loud. So whenever a leader, whether it's a legislative leader or someone locally, openly questions the results of a free and fair election, or when they strategize with extremists, or when they hurl vitriol at other political leaders, that's not civility. And actions like that need to be called what they are. They need to be denounced by anyone who claims to champion civility. Because each uncivil action is not just a poor reflection on the person waging it, it reflects on us all, on our state, on our people, on our businesses. And it's a distraction from the things that we really need to get done. We can't afford to miss what's right in front of us, an unprecedented opportunity to invest in Michigan. We can't let this pitch go by. It's not what any of us in government, in the private sector, Michiganders as a whole want. So I ask all of you as business leaders to lean in, to hold people who espouse dangerous rhetoric accountable, to uplift and embody the conduct that we can all be proud of. I need you to play a role here in bringing down the temperature of our public discourse so we can properly address the challenges we face. And I urge you to weigh in on ongoing negotiations as we work to get billions in aid deployed into the Michigan economy now, not quarter by quarter, but right now. I'll continue engaging in good faith and living my values because it's what our state needs and it's what our people deserve. So thank you for hosting me today. I want to leave you with this. We're all Michiganders first. We share the same values. And when we work toward a common goal, we can make tremendous strides. I know that the chamber and I share a goal to increase skills. I've laid out my budget. There are concrete steps I am proposing to move our goals forward. And I want to encourage you to use your positions to advocate for crucial programs that'll help us succeed. In tandem with the COVID recovery plan, the budget will make a meaningful impact on our state and help us build back better from the pandemic and the recession. I look forward to reaching across the aisle, engaging with the community, and working with the legislature to build back our economy for our kids, our families, and our businesses. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor. I'd like to now welcome also Director Massaron to join us for the Q&A. As a reminder, these questions were submitted by you, our attendees, during registration. So at first question, we're going to kind of start at a little bit higher level. You talked about this during your presentation, that the pandemic has not impacted the state budget like many might have thought as negatively. In fact, we're able to propose $175 million deposit into the budget stabilization fund to replace about half of what was withdrawn last year to respond to the pandemic. Can you maybe share with us like how much of this was attributed to federal support and what does the long-term budget forecast look like?
I appreciate the question, Rick. I think it's really important. And, I'm at the risk of sounding like a broken record. The Michigan COVID recovery plan that we need to get passed is $5 billion that we can deploy into our economy right now. It's dollars that were signed into law by President Trump. It was supported by a bipartisan coalition of our congressional delegation. And these are dollars for vaccine distribution, for testing, for helping small businesses that are struggling, $1.7 billion directly to schools. So that's an important part of our ability to make a deposit into our budget stabilization fund, because these resources are the basis for our economic resurgence. Now, the ability for us to write a budget that makes this deposit, I think, is a tribute to the management over the last year, but also the increased federal assistance that we have gotten. But like I said, they're connected. So it's really important that we get that COVID recovery plan passed. But because of our collective efforts, we've been a national leader in the fight against COVID and using data to drive our decisions. And so we've been in a much stronger position in order to make this deposit. I think that it's important that we show that our credit rating we've been able to sustain it even in these tough times, that we have got the resources and a lot of one-time resources because of the federal dollars that have come in. And we thought that making a deposit back into the budget stabilization fund was a wise thing to do. We didn't like having to make the withdrawal in the first place, but being in this position now is kind of a surprise considering all that we were anticipating and forecasting. Dave, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I just say, when we look out to the long term in terms of where the state's budget's going, so much is going to be determined, as the governor said, on the investments we make now to get to the other end of the pandemic. Once the economy is robust and people feel safe to interact and to conduct business, that's when revenues will start to return. Because we're not at that point yet, next year's budget will be tight again. And that tightness will be determined by how quickly we get vaccines in people's arms, how well we test so that we can contain the pandemic, and all that is driven by the resources the state puts towards it, the federal government puts towards it. And hopefully we can keep doing that so next year's budget has the same type of good news that this year's budget has.
Thank you so much. Going to kind of staying on this theme a little bit. Our local governments and many of our businesses haven't fared quite as well in their budgets and their finances, partly due to much more prolonged closures of big sectors of our economy than any of us would have ever anticipated. So a question that many people here today are asking, with the case numbers declining significantly, vaccines being administered, and really a year almost now of learning how to provide a safe work environment, can you share any insights as to what public health orders that may be being reviewed with MDHHS at this time, and thoughts on business and industry that are still under the restrictions?
Yeah, thanks, Rick. Sure. So, we've come a long ways. We've learned an incredible amount about this novel virus. Think about where we were a year ago, just learning about it, having not a lot of information, it being a novel virus. And thanks to a lot of the partnership with a lot of different business leaders, we really had a strategic way of re-engaging our economy. And we were largely successful. We had a great economic rebound. I think it's undeniable in this moment that the public health crisis begets the economic crisis. And so in order to be successful on both fronts, we can't ignore one side. And so we've been focusing on the data. We saw our numbers at a very alarming rate back in November. Had a lot of conversations with our hospital systems leaders, some of whom are probably participating today. And we were concerned about our hospitals becoming overrun. We did the pause, and the pause has worked. Michigan now boasts the lowest positivity rate in the region, one of the lowest in the country. We're going to probably get to 2 million shots in arms by the end of this week. That's individual shots, so it's not 2 million people who are fully inoculated, but we've made great strides. We're in the top 10 in that. And so because of both of these factors, I do think that in the coming days, we will be making some moves on that particular front, the re-engagement of sectors that haven't been re-engaged yet. We're gonna have to be incremental though. That was part of the lesson of the Michigan Economic Recovery Council, which some of your members were a part of. And I think it's gonna be really important that we are thoughtful and watch the data going forward. The biggest concern right now are the variants. Viruses mutate. I'm not a virologist or an epidemiologist or a public health expert, but I surround myself by the smartest people I can find. And this is not unexpected. Viruses mutate. Right now, Michigan has the most B117 mutations in the country after Florida. It's very concerning because this is 150% more contagious than the original COVID-19. It's not more deadly per se, but when 150% more people get it, 150% more people it's fatal for. And so it's serious, and we've got to continue to watch and monitor. And that's why, broken record, we got to get the COVID recovery plan passed. $5 billion that we need for testing supplies. At the rate of testing in our nursing homes and schools alone, we need about 3 to 4 million tests a month. We are going to be out in a couple of weeks, and it's a couple of week lead time. So these resources are critical to us making more steps going down the road of re-engagement. We have to be able to test and vaccinate. And so these resources are a critical component to us being able to do that.
Thank you. Maybe some light at the end of the tunnel there for us.
Definitely. I mean, on Friday, we hosted President Biden at Pfizer in Portage. And I mean, what a great acknowledgement of the hope, right, that we all have, and the pride every Michigander should have, seeing what's happening here in our own state. but we got to keep our guard up, and we have to be strategic and move incrementally. We got to get those resources deployed.
Kind of staying on the subject, Kent County Health Department and our local health systems have done an incredible job throughout this pandemic, including the most recent collaboration for the vaccination of our citizens. They have, or we have, a capacity of 35,000 people a day if the supply is available. And we all know that vaccination is kind of the next big step to kind of really fully reopen our economy. It was recently announced that Michigan is rolling out a new vaccine strategy to help Michiganders 60 and older who live in communities with high social vulnerability index and high COVID mortality rates. Can you maybe expand on that in how that changes the original kind of occupation and age-based plan?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. And I mean, highlighting what's happening at DeVos Place is fantastic. I had a tour there last week, or yeah, it was just last week. The days all run into one another, Rick. I'm not going to pretend that they don't. It's been a heck of a 12 months, but I was there last week. It is really incredible. The Michigan National Guard working with the hospital system, working with the public health department. I mean, it really is a phenomenal story. And when we get the vaccines in, they're going to be able to really ramp up and inoculate a lot of people. And it's wonderful. What we have seen since the new administration took over is a regular weekly increase in the number of vaccines that they are deploying nationally. They have locked in the contracts with the vaccine producers so that we've got some confidence going forward that the vaccines will be there. One of the things prior to the administration was just lack of visibility. What can we expect? What is on the horizon? With Johnson & Johnson likely getting early use authorization this week, we'll have another tool in our ability to vaccinate. So the numbers are headed in the right direction, but it is like a locomotive. It's bumpy and slow at the beginning, but it is really starting to pick up speed now and smooth out. Some are saying that in the next couple of months, we will have more vaccines than we have demand. That will be a problem too. We will have to get to 70%, and we're going to all have to be hands on deck in order to get the confidence of people that they will go and get the vaccines. But right now, that's not the case. Right now, there's way more demand than there are vaccines. It's improving every day, but the Biden administration has sent a direct message to states that the social vulnerability index is an important aspect to inoculating the most vulnerable people in our society. And that's the prioritization. All of these prioritizations are going to get collapsed eventually as more vaccines come online. But at this juncture, it was important that we build that into our projections and into our strategy so that we can pull more vaccines into Michigan from the administration and get to the people that are the most vulnerable to this virus.
Thank you. One of the items that you touched on in your presentation was, the pandemic really shed a bright light on the additional challenges faced by our families with young children. And for the chamber, we share with you a priority of creating access to quality, affordable childcare, including leading a statewide work on the TriShare pilot, which went really well. So thank you for your support for that and for including additional money in your budget. Let's talk a little bit more about, how does this connect to our economic recovery? Good quality childcare. Help us make that connection.
Yeah, well, there's no question that with the number of people that have left the workforce, some because they needed to run a household and become a teacher and, do all the things that families need in this time when our kids aren't in school. Some by no choice of their own have been displaced. And so the ability to ramp back up and to get people back to work is contingent on our ability to give those working parents the resources and opportunities that they need to have their kids to have some early learning opportunities and childcare. And so we've been hearing from employers all across the state about how important this is, especially in rural parts of the state, to make it more enticing for people to go into childcare and to stay into childcare. We increase, what we're able to pay, but also increasing the eligibility limits so that we can expand who who can access these programs was really important. So we think this is a really wise use of resources and would like to make it a long-term commitment ultimately. Dave, did I miss anything?
No, you got it. It's over $350 million investment in this space to, again, try to drive access to childcare. It's one we're really proud of.
It is a national kind of a pilot. Really, we've been getting calls from other chambers in other states, kind of watching as this plays out. And so it's been great to be involved with that. Appreciate your support.
Yeah, it's great. Good stuff.
Yeah, another area kind of related that and you mentioned this in your presentation as well, a common area that we share as a priority is talent development. Supporting programs like the Futures for Frontliners and Michigan Reconnect and the Going Pro. Many of our West Michigan employers have found those programs incredibly valuable. Now, how is the administration tracking the success of those programs? And then it's kind of a follow-up, like, how are we helping connect those who are unemployed with the opportunities that are available in our across the state?
Yeah, so in my first day of the state, as you might recall, I set our state goal of getting to 60% of our adults into some sort of a post-secondary certificate or degree. We're about 45%, so we got some work to do. But this is an important thing to give people a path to a high wage job and to meet the needs of our employers, frankly, who know that talent is perhaps the singular most important aspect to making an investment and growing a business. So as you know, the talent is the key, and putting nearly $200 million into workforce programs, a few workforce programs, so that we're not spreading a lot over or a little over a long ways. We wanted to really be thoughtful in terms of how we do this. But the Reconnect program, it was a bipartisan program that we authored and got incredible leadership and partnership out of the legislature for. And Futures for Frontliners, we designed based after the GI Bill, acknowledging the incredible sacrifice that so many people made while the rest of us stayed home. And so we're tracking a number of metrics for the program, including in-demand jobs and that the business community has said that they need filled. So we've seen thousands of people applying in the first hours of this. We want these programs to lift folks out of the ALICE rate, the United Way's ALICE population. People who are working full-time but are still living in poverty, can't afford to meet their necessities. So we have, I think, the capacity and ability to track and make sure that we are reaching out to that population as well as the unemployed and underemployed. So these were, this is a culmination of efforts of leadership in the business community and state government coming together to design programs that really meet the needs of individuals and get people into employable skills that will translate into jobs, good jobs.
Great. Before I shift gears here in the last couple of minutes that we have, I wanted to allow an opportunity if there's any other key programs or initiatives that you believe help with our economic recovery that we've not touched on yet today.
Dave, you want to jump in and share anything on your mind? Because I've been doing all the talking. But I mean, Dave joined my team like 2 months ago, right toward the end of writing a budget, which was incredible, the amount of work that he's done. But he's really, I think, helped put us in a position where we're thinking further down the line. I mean, everything's been in the moment, in the crisis of the moment. But I think we're making some long-term decisions in this that are driven by this budget. So Dave, if you want to share anything, please feel free.
Well, I appreciate it. And obviously, Governor, you're a more effective communicator than me, so we're probably doing well if you're doing most of the talking. But I would say that one thing we haven't spent a lot of time on is the investment we've put in the education space, particularly to COVID recovery. If you think about it, we've got a group of seniors, juniors in high school that are beginning to transition into the next phase of their life, and they really missed out because of the pandemic on a lot of growing to do together. So we put tremendous amount of resources into mental health, behavioral health, physical activity, and college readiness to move on to the next stage. A lot of our institutions are community colleges, people that are going to be participating in the Reconnect program, this missed period here, we need to invest in those kids. The federal government gave us a considerable amount of money to invest there. And I think when we think about the long-term economic impact, making sure that our kids in school now, particularly those of high school age that are making these transitions, are invested in and are not set behind when they get to the workforce or to college, is a really important part of developing that workforce for the future. And the governor has directed us to focus there and make some significant investments. I think, over $150 million on just readiness in that transition period. And it's something that I think that we probably don't spend enough as a society thinking about the impact on those high school kids and what they're missing out on just in terms of emotional growth and ability to be around their friends and go through that high school graduation experience. So I think that investment is something we should focus on. And it's something that we hope that the legislature obviously will agree with us on and enact into law.
Thank you. And I guess maybe might be my last question with the time. And you mentioned the legislature, and we've kind of seen this is your third budget, I think you said, and we've seen that maybe the first one was a little challenging process. Anything going about differently, or what do you expect this year from the process?
Well, I'm hopeful that we can get budgets done before the legislature takes their 4th of July break. Our school districts, our municipalities, all of their budgets start then, and to have some assurance about what we're dealing with. This has been an unprecedented time, unprecedented in the vitriol, unprecedented in the challenge. We have, I think, put Michigan in a stronger position by following the data and by really working together at various levels of government to roll out vaccines. We want to give locals and the state, frankly, the confidence to know what they're working with as they go into next year after all of this this lack of confidence, to have something to work with. And I think we've written a really good budget. It's obviously balanced. We make a deposit into the budget stabilization fund. We prioritize the education of our kids, the upskilling of our population, infrastructure, things like roads and bridges and water infrastructure. These are the fundamentals. And as I wrote this budget, we know that the legislature is always going to be a challenge to work with. But I do think that we have focused on the fundamentals. There is no partisan bent to it. It's about getting things done. It's about getting our economy back on track. And I hope and believe that should, if that's everyone's North Star, we're going to be able to get it done, and we're going to do some great things this year. And that's precisely why we wanted to have this conversation. I think that the chamber and the members of this chamber really have an important voice in how we are moving forward. And I will continue to do my best to reach across the aisle and to build bridges. It's not always easy, but I am committed to it because at the end of the day, this isn't about me. This is about Michigan. And that's why I ran for this job. And that's what's always going to center the work that we do and where we put our energy.
Well, thank you, Governor Whitmer and Director Massaron, for your time with us today. And thank you for all of our attendees for staying informed with us and making West Michigan a great place to do business. The Chamber's team will continue to advocate for the issues that matter most to the West Michigan business community, prioritize the top issues identified in our 2021 survey. We are pleased to see that many of these things are being addressed in the proposed budget, but we know there's still a lot of work to be done. Our government affairs team will continue to communicate with you on a regular basis through our Chamber Catalyst newsletter and our social media pages. Please, if you're not currently receiving updates from us, let us know and we'll be happy to make sure that you're added to those distribution lists. Thanks again to our sponsors, Amway, AT&T, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan, and Priority Health. And thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Governor.
Bye. Thank you.